Hey everyone, welcome back to the Talking North podcast. A 25-point win over Richmond on Sunday sees us go to 10th on the ladder with a record of 7-7, our best win record since 2019. Not a great performance by any means, but two gritty wins on the trot to even the ledger for the year. And actually have us in contention for the wild card after the bye is definitely pleasing, and I think we can look past, perhaps not the best performance, and kind of get excited about, a possible finals charge at the in the second half of this season. So first quarter was definitely something. 8-8 at quarter time, so extremely low scoring. It was a bit of a weird start to the game. Looked like we were kind of adjusting to the MCG a little bit. Very different ground dimensions to Marvel, where we've played most of our games this year, and kind of similar to Optus, but we looked a little bit sluggish. After a week, 2 weeks away, and it definitely took us a while to get started. There wasn't a score in the game for the first 10 minutes. Richmond ended up getting the first goal. We got one on the board with Wardlaw, thank God, to not go into quarter time goalless. But it was definitely a concerning start. I think we looked good in the midfield, and we were dominating the ball, but we were just entering it so poorly. I can't even recall how many times we just bombed it in high and Richmond easily cleared it out. So it was definitely an odd start. And Richmond, to their credit, actually played pretty well. They looked like they were there for a sluggish contest, and I think they probably believed that the way that they could get us was by playing that sort of game, and it definitely didn't suit us. As I went into the second quarter, we started to play a little bit better, but our defensive to forward transition was still really poor, and we weren't getting good entries in from that part of the game. But where we actually started to really show our dominance and flex our muscle was in the middle. I'm pretty sure most of our goals in that second term actually came from centre bounces, and it was the likes of Finn O'Sullivan, Wardlaw, Eldew and Sheasel entering it really nicely inside 50. We were getting forward half of the stoppage, and that was honestly thanks to Cooper Trembath, who even in the first quarter was playing such a high amount of centre bounces, and Sherry was starting in the forward line most of the time, which I think a lot of us have been crying out for. I think just because Sherry's our ruck, it doesn't mean we have to start him at centre bounces, and clearly with the new rule, Cooper Trembath is a much better leaper at the footy. Looks like Clarko's learnt from that, and that Cooper Trembath is going forward going to be our main ruck at centre bounces, which if we were told this at the start of the year, we wouldn't believe it. But my God, he's such a talented player, and not to mention he also kicked 2 goals in the second quarter, so he was swinging brilliantly from the middle to the forward line, and just had such an excellent game. And especially in that second quarter, he was kind of the difference in quality. We were kicking pretty inaccurately. Zane Dersmer and Spargo were missing some pretty easy set shots. Even Larkey missed one. But yeah, we went into the halftime break up by 8 points. Felt a bit weird. I feel like we should have been up by more, but in saying that, we were lacking a lot of quality. I'm pretty sure, it was like 3 goals to 2 our way in the second term. Just such an odd game, so low scoring. It was a nice day as well at the G. There was not a cloud inside. It was clear. It was a bit chilly, but you wouldn't think that would stem the quality of the game. But it was just very off. It felt as though we were kind of stooping down to Richmond's level, which is frustrating. All due respect to Richmond, we are a much better team than them, and we've shown that, by winning by 100 points combined in the 2 games we've played them this year. But it definitely felt like a game that we should have won by more, and I think the first half set the tone for that. Saying that, the third quarter was really our strongest one. We won at 3 goals 4 to 0 goals 4. Unfortunately, more inaccurate kicking, more misses from Zane Dersmer and Spargo. But we definitely played a lot better. The synergy between the back line, the midfield and the forward line looked a lot better. Colby McKercher got out on a few runs and really set up a few goals, which was really nice to see. So yeah, we went into the 3/4 time break up by 26. Probably should have been up by more, but I was confident going into the last that we could really put it to bed and maybe even get a similar margin as we did last time against them and go really big in the last quarter. And at the start, I thought we'd do that. Bit of another slow start to the quarter, which just, kind of seemed to be the trend of the game. But a George Wardlaw, his second goal of the game in his 50th game, put us up by 40 points. It's like, oh, there we go. We could win this game by 60 plus. But unfortunately not. Richmond found a bit of fight and they ended up kicking 3 of the next 4. They got the margin down to, I think it was 16 at the lowest, maybe. I might be wrong, but they cut the margin down to at least like the early 20s. And I was like, oh, surely not, right? There was no point I really thought that they could win the game, but it was pretty frustrating that we kind of let them like stick around in the game, because I think respectfully they shouldn't have been in the game and we should have been well ahead and could have kept on pushing to, what might end up being quite an important percentage, as we might, end up on the same amount of wins as a team in 10th or whatnot, and that could cost us a spot. That's nitpicking, and obviously it shows how far we've come that I'm, frustrated that we didn't win by more, but that's kind of the standards that we've got to set for ourselves now. Fortunately, Dylan Stephens was able to seal the game with the last goal. So a 25-point win, but definitely not a satisfying one. I think we can all admit that. Very odd game. I mean, to our defence's credit, we kept them to 6 goals, which is great, but Richmond are probably the weakest team offensively with such a injury-depleted forward line. But yeah, only 25-point win in a game that I think we should have won by more, and I think we probably would have liked to win by more. But again, that's nitpicking, right? We've come so far as a club that the main concern is the margin that we won by. But, if I look in hindsight, we've already won 7 games for the year. At the start of the season, I predicted us to only win 7 games, and we've got a lot of winnable games coming up. So it looks like we're going to easily surpass the mark that I set for ourselves. So, I think even if we win 2 games for the rest of the season, which would be slightly disappointing, I still see this season as a success and a definite growth. I mean, we've already won 3 more games. No, sorry. 2 more games than last year. And we've still got a fair amount of footy to go, and some, we're still playing a lot of teams below us and around us on the ladder. So I just got to give the team some credit, and we're winning ugly now, which is excellent. Like, the last 2 weeks, if we put those kind of performances in last year against the likes of Richmond and West Coast, if our quality dropped like that last year and in years past, we definitely wouldn't have won. It felt like in the past few years we had to play our absolute best footy to get wins, but now that we can play, arguably, not great footy and still win, I think that's huge credit to the team, and we've done that a few times already this year, and I think that's excellent. And it shows that, our floor has really improved. We've got less passengers, and our star players can really, show oppositions, especially lower teams, certain levels, and I think we got to take the win. And 25 points, it's more than 1 point like we did against West Coast. It's not like we scraped over the line. It's a fairly decent margin, but I think based on the last time we played Richmond and the context of the game, I think a lot of us feel like we could have won by more, but again, we take the win, and 7 wins already, got to be pretty happy with that. Now let's go through each player. So to start off with the back line, as mentioned, we kept them to 6 goals. Yes, a weaker Richmond forward line, but before the last 2 weeks, we'd conceded 100 plus points in 6 games in a row, and now we've kept 2 teams in a row to under 80 points, which I think is excellent. To start off with Luke McDonald, I thought he was decent again. I mean, I think Elmac cops a lot of criticism, and he's often the scapegoat for a lot of North fans, but it's hard to argue that he didn't have a good game. I think he did what he needed to do. He had a funny moment on the goal line where he got a rush behind, which was a bit odd, but that was just kind of what that kind of game was like. It was a bit odd. Next up, Aiden Core. This was probably the most controversial team change of the year, arguably. Core coming in for Logue. Obviously, Logue had a pretty poor game against West Coast, and we decided to go for core, which actually meant that Comben ended up being our number one defender. But to Core's credit, he played pretty good. Didn't get beaten too much in one-on-one contests. Had a few disappointing uses of the ball, but I don't think he did anything wrong. But again, it is hard to determine how our backman played against such a young and inexperienced Richmond forward line. But he did the job, and I'd say he probably keeps his spot. Next up, Charlie Comben. As I mentioned, he was their number one. He was our number one defender for the day, but it's hard to say who Richmond's number one forward is, so I don't think it changed too much about Comben's game, but he was really solid again. He's getting more reliable on one-on-one contests, and I think he's making it pretty obvious that he's our most important defender, whether people like that or not. I think, Comben has his moments, but he is really evolving as a defender, and we can't forget that this is only his third year as a backman, and he's only going to get better from here. There's been talks over, the last few weeks that Tassie are interested in him. I'm sure they are. I'm sure Tassie are interested in a lot of players, but I think Comben seems pretty happy at the club, and I'm not sure when his contract is ending. I assume it's ending either next year or the year after. But yeah, obviously Tassie are going to be interested in players, and I think it's more of a compliment than anything that they want one of our key defenders, but I'm pretty confident the club and him have a really good relationship, and Comben's relationship with his teammates seems pretty strong, and he seems, very adapted to the Melbourne lifestyle. He's in a band. I'm pretty confident Charlie Comben stays at this club, and I'd love to see that because he's going forward, he's probably our most important defender. Next up, Colby McKercher, a better performance. He seems to really like playing at the MCG. A lot of space to run, a lot of width. I think he really likes that about it. So he got 23 touches and looked pretty damaging when he had the ball. He started a few of our attacks through defensive transition, which were really important. I think he's still got room to grow for sure. I think, he can find more of the ball. He can use it a bit better sometimes. But, that's nitpicking, and I think Colby's evolving as a player constantly. I think we need to have patience with players like these, like Colby McKercher. I don't think it's time yet to play him in the midfield like we had to a few weeks ago when Finn O'Sullivan was out. I think, let him find the footy, let him become confident enough in his game down back that he can work on his contested side. But for now, I do really like him as an uncontested player off the half back, brings some good speed. Next up, Caleb Daniel. Wowee, 40 disposals at 90%, and he looks pretty good defensively. Absolutely nothing critical to say about Caleb, especially these last few weeks, and particularly on Sunday. Just such an impressive performance. He looked like he found the ball really easily. He was using it well. He wasn't, getting beaten in one-on-one contests like he often does. I think I've been really harsh on Caleb Daniel in the past, but genuinely I think he's been one of our best players this year. And it's credit to Brady Rawlings and the list management team for bringing him over from the Dogs, because he's made this team improve, whether people want to admit that or not, whether I want to admit it or not. I feel like I kind of have to now. It's undeniable what he's doing. He's racking up lots of the ball, racking up coaches' votes. Fair play to Caleb Daniel. Like he's making us a better team, which is awesome. Next up, Luke Parker. Didn't really notice him too much, I'll be honest. But he looked good when he had it, and he's very solid defensively. He's kind of the troop back there. You can tell he's a really good leader. He's a really good person for our young players to go to. So he's again, his move back has been really important. Cooper Harvey looked extremely comfortable at AFL level. I always feel like he is very comfortable at AFL level. Often when players from the VFL come up to the AFL, you can tell that it's a huge difference for them, and that they struggle a little bit. But Cooper Harvey's never a player that I feel, gets frightened by the big stage. I think, his dad's Brent Harvey. He knows what it's all about. But I don't think he's just in the team because of his dad. I think he's rightfully earned his spot back, and I like his move down back because I genuinely think he's one of the best ball users at the club. Very, very skillful player, and he's looking much better defensively too. Although Morris Rioli is, not in the greatest of form, Cooper Harvey did a good role on him, kept him very, very quiet. Morris didn't seem to get out with those chase down tackles that he's really good at. So yeah, fair play to Cooper Harvey. I think he 100% keeps his spot next week. Then Cam Zurhaar played a lot of the game in the backline this week. He's still an experiment what we're doing with Cam Zurhaar, but I really liked his game. Took a lot of crucial intercept marks. He's just so strong in the air, and he looks even better taking marks down back because I don't know if it's less pressure or just he's been freed up, but he's really strong in the air, and he's becoming an important player for us down back. And it is easier for him against the likes of Richmond, and I don't necessarily think we should play him against the better teams in the league. But what he's doing defensively when we need him to is really important. So another solid game from Zurhaar. Now onto the midfield. Jai Simpkin definitely had an interesting week with the comments he had to make about Paul Curtis, but that didn't seem to affect his game too much. He looked pretty decent. He played a fair amount of the game in the middle, which is interesting now looking back because during the trade period he was interested in a move away from the club because he wanted more midfield time, but I feel like he's getting his fair share of centre bounce attendances now with Tom Powell out of the team, and Simpkins' form deservedly, he deserves to play in the middle, and Jai's had a good game, 23 touches, nothing to complain about really. Next up, Tom Blamires. Just excellent again, really. He had such a strong game against West Coast, and although not as not as good as he was against the Eagles, just really solid. I think he owns that. He's owning that wing role now with Dylan Stephens on the other side. Good runner, good kick, good team player. No complaints about Blamires. He's been an excellent pickup from preseason. Now to the other winger, Dylan Stephens, just reliable. He's just improved so much from last year. And although he's not having, some of those really good games like he was early in the season, like against Port and whatnot, he's just solid. Around 20 touches and a nice goal. He's a good runner. He gets back defensively. He gets forward. He's one of those role players that's going to be so important when we start pushing for finals. Next up, LDU, bit of a weird game, oddly quiet, only 18 disposals. He did a few nice things of breaking some tackles. I don't know if his minutes were managed, but he looks not fully fit. I remember Clarko in the presser leading into this game said, LDU was doing some extra training stuff and didn't partake in all of training, and I wonder if he's carrying something. We had the bye recently and we had the trip to Perth, so wouldn't be surprised if LDU maybe gets rested next week or gets a game off soon, because he's such an important player for us. We need to manage him, but I feel like when he had the ball he looked good. He just didn't find it as much as I expected. Maybe not that I noticed, maybe someone put some attention into him, but bit of a quiet game. But in saying that, it actually benefited Harry Sheasel, who just looked really good again. 31 touches, looked damaging with the ball. Had a really nice pass inside 50 to Colby McKercher outside the boot. Just looked really creative. He clearly loves playing Richmond. If he just gets his goal kicking right and he can become a player that can average... I believe he can become a player that can average 30 and a goal a game. If he gets that goal kicking right, he'll start becoming one of the elite midfielders in the AFL. But Sheasel really solid and reliable again. Next up, George Wardlaw. I'd say it's one of the better 15 disposal games you'll see. He just looks so damaging, and he had his highest time on ground for the season. He had 73% time on ground, and he had 2 fantastic goals. Our first goal of the game and our first goal of the last term. In his 50th game, he looks really confident in his body, really confident in his game, and there's been shouts that this guy could be our next captain, and it's hard to disagree with that, with his attack on the footy, and he's starting to become a better user of the ball, and absolute fan favourite, probably my favourite on the team, George Wardlaw. It's just brilliant to see him fit and enjoying his footy. Finn O'Sullivan, really nice to have him back. Didn't have his best game by any means, but I just notice how clean he is with the ball, how easily, when other players struggle to pick the ball up on the ground, he seems to do it with such ease. And he's just such a good team player. He runs really well defensively. Really good to have him back. Our midfield just looks so much better with him. Now to the rucks. This was an interesting game, and there was clearly a tactical tweak. Tristan Sherry was barely at centre bounces all game, and I really like that because I think, as I mentioned earlier, like we've been crying out for that, for Cooper Trumba to be the ruck at centre bounces more. But I think it helped Sherry out. I think around the ground he got the better of Nank. He took some nice marks around the ground, and I mean he's such a competitor, such a good tackler of players, and I think Sherry's probably happy to take a little bit of a step back now. Last year it felt like everything surrounded him, and we're not so reliant on Sherry now, his contested game and his ruck work. And I think with the new rules he's starting to adjust a little bit better. He had a pretty solid game. The other ruck, Taylor Goad, interesting, no fault of his own, but only 29% game time. And I kind of just like see that and I'm like, what's the point of playing someone if they're playing like less than a third of the game? Like, he was off for like 15 minutes at a time. I think he barely played in the last quarter. And I get it, it's hard with, Trembath in the centre bounce, and when he's in the centre bounce, Sherry's in the forward line, so you can't really have Goad on. I think eventually we want Goad to do what Trembath does, a lot of centre bounce work and then going forward. But I'm not sure it's if we don't trust him yet or if we're managing his minutes. But 29% is just absolutely nothing. Like, when Will Dawson was in, I was even critical when he was getting 40% game time, but that's a fair bit more than 29%. I'm pretty sure Goad was off for the entire last quarter. Wonder if he picked up something during the game or he's carrying something. But I mean, I like what Goad shows when he's on, but it's hard to get an impression of him as a player when he's getting that little game time. But we're actually undefeated when Taylor Goad's in the team, so maybe it doesn't matter how much he's playing. But in saying that, I would like to see him get more game time, at least 50%, because 29% you can't really show the coaches and the fans what you've got. But yeah, he looked good when he was on. Now to the forward line. First up, I want to talk about Charlie Spargo. Bit of a weird game. There's been some stuff going around, in the fan base that he should be dropped, and he was a letdown during the game, and I kind of agreed to an extent. And then I looked at his stats, and he had 20 touches and a fair amount of score involvements. Obviously, he got 2 behinds that he probably should have kicked, and it was definitely a weird game. Like, he did some really, really poor things, like some silly turnovers and a lack of effort in terms of tackling and competing in the air. But I think he also did some good things as well. He had some good entries inside 50. So it's a hard game to read. I don't think he'll be dropped, but I think his spot in the side shouldn't be as comfortable as maybe what it is currently. I think he brings something to the team, but I don't think he necessarily brings more than, maybe a Zach Banch or maybe a possible debutant, Oliver Griffin, who he kicked 4 goals in the VFL. Maybe he comes in, but no, I can't see Spargo getting dropped. But I think he's there's some times during the game where I'm a little bit concerned and questionable about what Spargo necessarily brings. But sometimes he does some really good stuff. So maybe it's because he had an interrupted preseason, but he is 26 years old, and I think I kind of want to see him more reliable than he is currently, but, he'll get there. I think, I don't want to, call for him to get dropped, but I think he's a watch, I would say, Charlie Spargo. Next up, Cooper Trembath. I'd say he was our best on. 4 goals in a low-scoring game, 4 goals straight. I think he looks brilliant at centre bounce. We got 2 or 3 goals directly from his hit-outs, which is just excellent. So it felt like he was pretty much involved in every one of our goals, which is just such a incredible impact for such a young player to have. And my God, he's looking like one of the best mid-season pickups ever. And he's genuinely a chance to win the Rising Star. I'd say he'd be up there with the likes of Willem Dersma, Jagger Smith, and who was the other one? I can't remember, but he'd be up there for sure, I'd say. I think he's such an important player, and he's such a good player to have on the team. And I mean, we should be grateful to have him because he's definitely a star in the making. That's for sure. Zane Dersma, just such a nearly game. With Curtis and Zerha not in the forward line, it looked like he had more space, and he took some nice lead up marks. He was finding the footy, but he kicked 0 goals 3 and a rush behind off a snap that just didn't make the distance. So could have kicked 4, could have kicked more than that even. So it's disappointing because this was a game that he could have really, after such a 2 disposals against West Coast for the whole game, it was a game that he really could have got some confidence back. But I hope just because he missed some easy shots, I hope that doesn't stunt his confidence at all because he's still a talented player. But it was frustrating because his kicking is usually his strength and his ability to find the ball is usually his weakness. But it was a bit of an opposite game for him. But hopefully next week against Essendon under the roof, he can get those chances again and redeem himself. It was a nearly game from Zane. Next up, Jacob Constantine, one of his better games, I'd say. Good pressure applied. He kicked a nice goal from around 50. He does this, Constantine. I feel like he has one game where he's really good, one game where he's a bit off. When he starts putting multiple games in a row together where he's playing well, he's going to become an important player for us. And I think I'm changing my tune a little bit on Constantine. I think I do like him there, and we've obviously got a lot of trust in him. We've already given him a contract till the end of 2028. So we have him contracted for a while, and he doesn't look like he's going to lose his spot, and I think he will get there. And when he starts really, reading the drop of the ball from after it's gone in the air and starts, averaging a goal or 2 a game, I think he can become quite a good small forward for us. And, I was impressed with his performance. Now onto the captain, Nick Larkey. Just oddly quiet. He played well against the Eagles last week. But on an undermanned Richmond defence. I mean, Richmond's backline's probably their strength, but who was he playing on? I think it was like Ben Miller or something. Like, all due respect, not a top key defender by any means. And he just got outworked. He got outbodied. He started to take a few contested marks. I think he kicked the 1 goal, missed a few as well. But I just want him to be more physical. And I get his frustration because over the years and, some of his better years in 2023, he'd always have, 2 players on him and he'd get held a lot. And, he's obviously had some frustrating years in terms of not getting many free kicks and whatnot. But now it looks like he's trying to play for free kicks too often, which is frustrating, that's for sure. But yeah, I think he's our captain, so we need to trust him to be able to get over this. Maybe confidence, maybe carrying a slight injury, but I think Suv will get there. Just another frustrating game from him. And then Jack Darling competed well, but it was restricted to no goals. He had such a strong performance against West Coast last week. I think he's 34. We can't expect him to put up that performance every week, but it would have been nice to see him have a little bit more scoreboard damage. But again, such a weird game. It's hard to read a lot of these performances, I'd say. But, we take the win and we move on next week to Essendon on Sunday at Marvel Stadium. And then that's followed up by Port Adelaide, Collingwood and St Kilda. So some really winnable games, and we could see ourselves at around 10-7. Which would comfortably have us in the wildcard. So some really exciting weeks coming up, a really important end of the season coming up, and my God, wouldn't it be brilliant to make the wildcard, and especially for the likes of Jai Simpkin, Larky and LDU, who've played so much footy without ever making finals. I think I can see these boys really, really lifting in this second half of the season because they would be more hungry than anyone to taste September footy for the first time. So some really exciting weeks coming up, and I think we can we do need to improve our performance and polishing things up, but we're getting the wins when we need to get them, and I think that'll give us confidence to lift our performance when we need to. But thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you soon to preview the Essendon game.